Just
Thank
so
you for
messy.
joining me today. Another episode of Healthy AF. With me is James Berry. James, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Zane. I'm excited to talk with you.
James owns the company EatPluck, which is a unique product we're gonna discuss, but basically a great way to incorporate all of the nutrients you want from organ meats into something super tasty that you're gonna really want to add to your food. So let's get into this, James, and explain to them what EatPluck is and why it's so valuable to people who are looking for that animal-based nutrition. But there may be some of them may not have a palate for organ meats.
Yeah, well, that's the hurdles, right? So I identified pretty early on that organ meats are the most nutrient-dense food on the planet,
Yeah.
but we're not eating them. So the hurdle being that we think they're icky. We don't know how to source them, and then we don't know how to cook them. And our ancestors used to, and when I say ancestors, I'm not talking Paleolithic. I'm talking even our grandparents. You
Right.
talk to a grandparent, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I ate, onions and liver weekly." But something happened, something changed, and that I would say from the late 60s on, we've just lost the flavor and taste for them, and thus the culinary knowledge. So I just set out. I was like, okay, I have kids. I want to make sure I'm getting the most nutrient dense foods into their diet. I want to make sure I'm getting the most nutrient dense foods in my diet. If organ meats are it, which they are, how do I do that? How do I make it so that there's no more hurdles and make it easy? Because as a parent, it's like, I talk to parents all the time and they're like, oh yeah, I make 3 different meals a night because this kid doesn't eat that, that kid doesn't eat that, and then we eat this. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You can't do that. Like, we're already working hard enough. You cook one meal and the kids either eat it or they don't eat it. And that's it. And if they don't want to eat it, they go to bed hungry, and then tomorrow they will eat it because they're going to start understanding that you have a boundary, right? So I'm all for, like, let's create environments where we don't have to be forced to work so hard. Like, let's make it as easy for us as possible. And so that's where Pluck came in. So I took freeze-dried powdered organ meats, the same stuff you find in capsules. We source it from New Zealand. It's 100% grass-fed. And I'm using 5 organs. I'm using liver from a cow, liver, heart, spleen, pancreas, and kidney. So 5 organs. And what I did was I took those freeze-dried powdered organs and I combined them with organic spices and herbs. And I basically made it so that it tastes good now. And it's now no different than just sprinkling your food, seasoning your food with salt and pepper. Literally no different. And yet it actually makes your food taste better. So not only are you getting organ meat nutrition, your food is tasting better. So to me, it's a win-win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything you can do to get the nutrients from the organ meats in there. But we actually had it the first time I tried it was at KetoCon. I was over at Dr. Barry and Nisha's place, and she sprinkled some on some deviled eggs. And I was like, what is this? I mean, it's just really bright, kind of rich looking texture and color. And I had no idea what it was at first until after they told me. But I was eating, I was like, oh man, this tastes great. It just had a lot of very savory, very
Yeah.
savory. And when they said what, well, I was like, oh, fantastic, because I didn't pack my liver to go to Austin. But it was really tasty, and surprised at how, I mean, I couldn't have pictured it until she did it. But because I think I'd seen you at the event, but they really brought out the flavor and the eggs. And you're not thinking I'm eating organs by any, you would have no clue that there was organ meat of any kind in that seasoning.
Well, that's what I love. I mean, because I didn't grow up eating organs. I mean, I
No.
know you said you eat liver, probably weekly, you said?
I eat basically I eat an ounce or two daily. It's kind of like my multivitamin be the first thing I eat. And it's kind of my way of just make sure I get it. And then I kind of check the box. It's done. Okay. Now I can
Yeah.
move on to the things I like the taste of.
Okay, so that's a really interesting point. So you're eating it for health reasons, but you don't actually like the taste of it.
I mean, I try to make it palatable, and I've gotten to the point now after several years of doing it that it doesn't bother me, but it's not something I crave. It's not something
Right.
it's like I think about, a ribeye. Like it's not the same, place as like a ribeye or something I find super tasty, like some ribs or something like that. It's something I do because of the nutrient density.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
you understand the value,
Yeah.
and in many ways, it's just it's functional. It's like it's fuel, right? It's fuel for your
Mhm.
longevity.
Exactly.
Well, and really, that's ultimately, yeah, I recognize that, but I'm also I want food to be delicious. I want it
Right.
to be easy and delicious, and I definitely have. So I've been a professional chef for over 17 years, and I have definitely learned to bottom line, like, what are the health movers? Like, what truly is going to support us, not in an idealistic kind of way, like, oh, I know I'm supposed to be eating organs, so let me just do this. And then you try it, and maybe you do it for a week, and then it falls off,
Mm.
because we're all human, and we're not perfect, and we're inconsistent, and so we have the best intentions, but things fall off. So for my money, I'm like, well, how can I make it so it's not even a new habit? Like you don't even have to think about it because we already season our food. It's not a
Right.
new habit for me to say, okay, now just season it with this. You season your food already. And I'm just saying, well, instead of using what most people are using is like Lowry's, they're using Lowry's seasoning salt. So I'm like, instead of using that, which is actually probably hurting you because they have sometimes sweeteners in there, they have fillers, they have anti caking agents. They have things in there that aren't really good for you, and most of them are extremely high in salt, and it's not even very good salt, right? It's not good salt. So
Right.
my whole point is like, well, okay, just use this instead. And now you're getting micro dosing of those micronutrients from organ meats and you're getting them regularly. So now it's autopilot. It's making the food taste better. So not only is it easy, but it's delicious. So then, and this is to me where it really matters, is now, COVID 4.5 could happen. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens in your life. You're going to do it because it's easy and it's delicious. And I've got to hit both of those. But if I hit both of those, you're going to do it and you're going to do it on autopilot. And now to me, health is actually manageable. Like health is achievable because you're not thinking about it. You're
Right.
just doing it. You're being it. You're being the healthy person. You don't even, it doesn't take any effort at that point. And to me, the more we can find health tools that are like that, the better off we'll be because emotional stuff's going to keep it like life isn't going to stop, right? It's like we're going to still have new pandemics. We're going to have new trials and tribulations. And for my money, it's the things that we can do consistently, the good things, the healthy things that are going to move the needle the most.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it becomes part of your system or part of your, habits, your daily habits. And so you're right. As soon as you can integrate something like that into your routine, it doesn't require that effort or thought. And so it's not a habit you have to maintain. It's just something you do. I want to point something out. You mentioned the salt. So you source your salt from a great, I mean, you're not just sourcing great, uh, nutrients from or organ meats, but you're sourcing salt from a fantastic source as well.
Yes, we use Redmond real salt. So yeah, absolutely. And salt, of course, has micronutrients as well. So you're getting quality salt. You're getting the quality grass-fed, 100% grass-fed organs, and then you're getting organic spices and herbs. Now, this actually, you make a good point. A lot of people don't realize this, but when you go to a grocery store and you're buying a packaged food, the most packaged foods, and this goes for seasonings as well, blends particularly, the companies are looking to maximize their profit. So they always use the two cheapest ingredients in their foods. And the two cheapest ingredients are salt and sugar. So that's why you'll see a lot of packaged foods are very sweet or they're very salty because they know that they can pump it full of whatever that ingredient, those ingredients, and then thus increase their profit margin and lower their actual cost of goods. So you'll see that in blends like seasoning blends, the majority of that blend is salt. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's like you're really just buying flavored salt. And what we did was we actually kept the salt fairly low because we know everyone's getting salt from every source anyway. And we also know that how much salt you need is going to be different from how much salt I need. And it's a lot of times it's based on lifestyle. It's based on stress, your adrenals tax, for example.
Right.
That's going to determine how much salt you need and or want. And so I didn't want to just come out with a product that just blasted your taste buds with salt and then, and
Mm.
kind of you're done. So I kept the salt lower, but I increased all the flavor things. So like onion is one of our granulated onion is like the first ingredient, and that's kind of unheard of because it's an expensive ingredient. Like organic onion is not cheap. So you kind of are getting, you're paying a higher price point than Lowry's because we have organ meats in our blend, right? But the quality is like 10 times better than Lowry's, if that makes sense. It's
Sure.
just so much better because of the way the actual product is conceived.
Oh, I'm sure of it. And your sourcing from the beginning is better than anything you're going to find
Everything, yeah.
in mass produced in the grocery store. And a lot of those are full of soy products, soybean oils have been dried in there. I mean, all sorts of things that you just don't want. And the MSG is still commonly found in there, maybe under a different name,
Right.
but it's the same idea, some sort of manipulated soy-based sodium that's got to make people bloated. It's hyper palatable, so it's tingling, the taste buds without a whole lot of, you know, good reason to, without the nutrients to go along with it. Now, is this your seasoning? So I'm thinking about, the delicacy that you created here. Is this something you would put on, like, say, meat, as a good example, before you cook it, or is it something you add after? Or
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're trained to put it on before. Like that's how most people think of food is seasoning it. But really, if you want to maximize flavor, you really should put it on after.
Mm,
Because heat destroys. Well, if you want to maximize flavor and nutrition, because heat destroys nutrition, so it degrades it. Any kind of heat from sun, if the packaging is clear and it's on a dock, in the sun, that's going to degrade it, right? If you keep your seasonings right next or oils right next to the stove, and they, every time you turn on, they get heated up a little bit, you're going to degrade them. It's just that's heat destroys vitamins and minerals. So you're going to slightly degrade it when you heat it. But for my money, what I do is I salt the food when I'm
mm.
cooking it, but then I season it with Pluck after it's cooked on my plate, because then it's just maximum nutrition and definitely maximum flavor. The flavor just pops. So
Gotcha.
that's how I personally use it. Unless I'm making a ground meat, when I do a ground meat, I'm mixing it into the meat, and then it's every bite is going to just be really nicely flavored.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just on top of a solid piece at that point. You're blending it in as you're cooking or before you cook the ground beef.
Yeah, yeah. And we have 4 products, and 3 of them are, I would call them seasonings, that they have flavors to them. One is all purpose or original, and the other is zesty garlic. And the last one is like a spicy mild. And eventually we're going to be coming out with a spicy AF. So we're going to cover all the spicy spectrum.
Love it.
But are you a spicy guy?
Well, the AF, a healthy
Yeah.
AF, spicy.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
that's the
yeah.
whole thing. Got
Um,
it.
But we have a 4th one called Pure, and that one is for the people that are like, look, I don't care about taste. I just want maximum nutrition. So that one is just organ meat. There's no salt, there's no spices, there's no herbs. And that one's kind of interesting because it's kind of a neutral flavor, surprisingly. You would think it
Mm,
would be really kind of livery or irony,
mhm.
metallic. And it's not. It's not that bad. It's pretty neutral. So I always tell people with Pure, you could take that one and add it to something that already has flavor. So like a smoothie, a sauce, a dressing, a soup, mix it in a ground meat, anything where the ratio is not as, it's not off. So like the Pure is just a small amount of what you're adding it to.
Mm,
But then what's interesting is that a lot of our carnivore customers, they're actually just using it as a seasoning. And so they're finding that it's increased because carnivore, are you 100% carnivore or are you more animal based?
no, much more animal based.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever done 100% carnivore?
For a short period,
Yeah. Did you find it kind of bland? Like it's just kind of like it's the same flavor over and over and
I
over.
mean, it can get that way. For me, it was more of a stress, like sleep was disturbed. And it just, I was getting enough magnesium and potassium for me. I felt
Oh,
dehydrated. So
okay.
I probably could have adjusted, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's just
You
like,
are eating the same
it's just
flavor.
salt, right? It's just
Yeah, it's just
salt and
salt.
meat. It's just all the time, right? So what we're finding though is a lot of our carnivore customers are sprinkling it on just the organ meat blend, and it's giving them that umami, that savoriness that you're talking about. It's giving them a new flavor, and so it's making the food actually more interesting to them. So that's kind of
Gotcha.
cool.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine. Yeah. And they know they're getting the nutrients. So it's just, which is what they're all about anyway.
Good.
So it's like an additive to to what they're already doing. It's taking it up a notch. And I'm sure, like you said, they could already salt it ahead of time. They could, rub it in, let it sit for a while, let the salt come in before they cook it, and have all that savoriness going into the meat ahead of time. So yeah, you're just adding a little savory on top. It makes sense. Yeah, because they're not using sauces either. They're not using
No,
extra sauces.
nothing.
They're not using, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Very
it
good.
kind of mixes it up a little bit. And what's kind of cool about it, I always uh I like using this as an example, but you know, really you could be technically just taking capsules, right? You could do it that way. And I'm so happy that when you do your liver, you're actually eating it, you're cooking it, you're eating it. And what I love about that and why I promote eating organ meats myself is I believe when we swallow our nutrition, we are bypassing our natural, God-given like digestive process. And you really can get an example of that is when you put salt on your tongue. If I put salt on my tongue, I get an immediate communication of what my body needs or doesn't need with sodium. But if I take a salt tablet, it's a delayed communication. So I swallow that, maybe 20, 30 minutes later, I feel bloated. Why am I bloated? Oh, I got too much salt. But if I just stuck it on my tongue, my body would have told me immediately, like, yes, you want more. And then I do another dip, and then I go to do it. And now my body's like, no, 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 no more. It doesn't taste right anymore. So you're done. So now I'm communicating with my body and I'm giving my body exactly what it wants or needs. Well, that's what I love about eating your organs. Is like you get to go off of your body. Because I know people that they were swallowing, like they were taking some organ capsules. And this one actually was at the Low Carb Denver when I was at that conference. This guy came up to me. He's like, yeah, I take those capsules. I feel nauseous. And I'm like, well, yeah, probably because you don't need 8 capsules. Your body either is having trouble eliminating um, any kind of, if the organs are eliciting any kind of detox, your body's probably either having issues with detoxification, or it's too much for you. Like your body chemistry is just needing a little ease into it a little bit, not go so hard. So you're probably wanting to do a lot less, but when you swallow it, you don't actually know. You don't know until you feel nauseous, you know? So I'm just a huge proponent of that eating. So that's why I love that you're eating the liver, and why I promote eating it as a seasoning versus swallowing it as a capsule.
Yeah. So you get that biofeedback from your taste buds.
To me, it's a missing link. It's something that people aren't talking as much about is, we can't just prescribe the same thing to everyone. We all have different locations, different lifestyles, different anxieties, different, there's just so many different levels of life that affects us. And we cannot blanketly just recommend the same amount for everybody because you're going to have different reactions. And so the more we can get back to listening to our bodies, this is a fascinating quote, but we are the only species in the world that has to ask somebody else what we should be eating.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that
I know.
crazy when you think about it?
And we're creating food specifically for our diet. We're actually creating food. We're not just eating whole food. We're creating food for our nutrition or just for our entertainment. I mean, yeah,
exactly. Could be just for our entertainment. I don't know.
yeah. The packaged food, all the processed food, it's like, yes, you could say we're the only ones technologically capable of that, but we are going out of our way to create new foods that wouldn't exist in nature.
No. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We were not eating 150 years ago. And It seems a little nonsensical to think that that's where our nutrition should come from, a bottle, a box, or a bag with a bunch of chemistry in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whereas like what you're talking about is taking a whole piece of, whether it's meat, a fruit, veggies, and you're adding something that you have, again, your seasoning is coming from whole food. You've just
Yeah. It's
dried
all
it.
whole foods. Yeah.
You've dried it and you've made it into something that can be concentrated flavor and to add to our food. It's a very different approach. And all these hyper palatable foods that we get, or that we see in the grocery stores that are packaged foods, they're throwing off, I think, our sense of taste and what food's supposed to taste like. When we come back to something that's like a home cooked meal, and we're bored by it, or we're not tasting the savoriness, the flavor of that food. And
Well, it is. It's fascinating. Like the palate is
yeah,
really fascinating. Have you ever done like we used to call it like a sugar controlled detox, like where you pull out anything that causes sweetness. So that's literal desserts, but it's also like starches, pastas, grains. And I know you don't eat that like that now, but I'm saying when you first changed your diet, do you remember the change in your palate that happened from it?
wow, it's hard to look back that far. I mean, it
Is
was
it
more
that
of a
long ago?
gradual move. Well, yeah, I mean, I started kind of going low carb in 2002,
Yeah, it's a while
2004.
ago.
So
Yeah.
it was a while, but,
You're like,
and so it was kind of it'd be in and out of it, but we started moving towards whole home cooking, basically. I think you can get that just from home cooking, and versus if you're eating out or getting processed food all the time, you're just moved towards more of a whole food diet. There's an immediate, you know, change and shift, I think, that has to take.
but it's I mean, I really, I welcome people to start pulling these flavor enhancers out of your diet. Like,
Yeah,
let's just say if you're someone who's drinking lots of soda, like just go all water for a little bit and just see.
right.
Cause at first that water, a lot of us forget this, but I remember as a kid, I remember when I was doing all those juices and sodas. And when I started drinking more water, how plain and gross water tasted.
Right.
And we tend to think when we are in a transition, we tend to think, oh, well, that means that that thing that I'm moving towards is not good. Like you'll hear that sometimes with people who have been vegetarian for a long time. They start eating meat and they're like, yeah, my stomach's not agreeing with the meat. That probably means I shouldn't be eating red meat. I should be eating like poultry. And I'm like, well, no, actually what it probably means is that you were vegetarian long enough that you're not producing as much stomach acid. And so what happens is when you start incorporating meat, it requires proper stomach acid, but you've lowered your stomach acid from not eating meat. And now you have to recalibrate your body, just like we need to recalibrate our palate when we've been eating a standard American diet. But it's amazing once you do how you start to really taste the true flavor of food,
Mhm.
like how you really get to enjoy how sweet a strawberry really is versus if you're someone who's eating lots of really sweet desserts and you go to eat a strawberry, they're not going to taste sweet to you because ice cream is a lot sweeter than strawberries, or whatever it
Right.
is. Candy bars are a lot sweeter than strawberries, things like that. But once you pull all that junk out of your diet, from vegetable oils to sugars to all that stuff, and then you taste something from nature again, you find that Mother Nature is incredibly dialed in. Like you can't get more dialed in. It's like the flavors are just as they should be. They're beautifully sweet or savory or whatever it is. They've got so much flavor when it's naturally grown, naturally provided for. And it's really these processed foods that have thrown off our palates and they've made these natural whole foods plain, if that makes
Yeah. Oh,
it just
absolutely.
it's like it's like going from Skippy to just ground peanuts. You know what I mean? Did you ever go through that process?
Yeah, I get it. No, I believe I get it because when I've taken them, have eaten those things, and then I like it's a kid's birthday or something, and I have a bite of whatever the thing is, a dessert or whatever it is that they're having. I'm just like, oh, sure, okay, come on, Dad, have a bite, have a bite. And I'm like, great,
It's
that's enough for me. I'm good.
yeah, it
It's
makes you
too
almost
much.
sick,
And how
right?
are they
It's too
sitting there
much.
eating a whole piece? And I'm like, one was enough for me to like wince from the sweetness and the overpowering. And then I'm tasting things that they're not tasting. I'm tasting the extra flavor and almost taste in some of those instances, I taste something almost, for lack of a better word, chemical, but it doesn't
Yeah.
taste natural. It has an unnatural flavor to it, to me. And I'm good. I'm like, okay, that's enough. I'm good for a year. And so,
And that's what's so brilliant though about your process of, of where you are with food. And what I'm always trying to show people is like, you need to be patient with that transition.
yeah,
You need to realize that the palate you have right now that you're so used to is not natural. It's not correct. It's not as intended. And so you have to give time, give patience for the switch over, but it actually surprisingly can happen quickly. Like you can change someone's palate in like 2 weeks, minimum 2 weeks. So people don't realize that you just got to stick with something. So let's just say you pull out, I don't know, what we used to do is sugar control detox. So it would be no desserts, nothing with sugar. It'd be no starches, um, no pastas, no rice grains, anything like that. So it was very
wow,
much a low carb diet. And you could only have, you couldn't even have all fruit. It was like only berries. Like you couldn't have pineapple or mangoes. Those are too sweet. So you were really making sure you were regulating your blood sugar basically on this diet. But in 2 weeks, people who had started out maybe drinking 3 glasses of wine a night, they could barely finish a half a glass. And it's because now their palate was tasting how sweet the wine really is, or how sweet the, the berries really are, or whatever it is. And if you stick with that as you have for 20 odd years, then the minute you go back, you're like, oh, no, I can't do it. Like your body will reject it because
yeah,
it's more acclimated to the right side versus the sugary side or whatever, the kind of standard American diet side.
right. The hyper palatable, hyper
Yeah,
sweet. I was saying, when you
exactly.
like, I mean, I know they create these foods to be that way to stimulate a little bit of addiction as well, like Doritos and things like that, where they actually alternate the chip flavors in there from mild to hot. So it's like you kind of get the hot one, then you get a few mild ones, and you're unconsciously chasing the next hot one, whether you realize it or not, to get the night. So they vary the flavor ratios within a bag with the different chips in order to create almost like an addictive search for that hyper hyper spicy one, right? The overspiced one, even within that bag.
Did you read that book, The Dorito Effect?
No,
Oh, it's a
I'd known this
great.
from oh gosh, there's a food researcher. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now, but is there's the Dorito effect? That's a paper or a book.
Yeah, book. It's a book, and it's a great book. He's written a few books on just the food industry, but he talks all about that, and it's really fascinating. We can't undermine a lot of times. As a chef for so long and working with different clients over the years, I'm always very like I try to really help people not be so hard on themselves because I find that we beat ourselves up so much. I mean, and I think that's why you see so much obesity and kind of self-hatred, that
Yeah,
shows up physically. We really are just so hard on ourselves, and we expect ourselves to be so perfect when I think the definition of being a human is imperfect. Um, and what has to be remembered is that, to your point, that we're up against an industry. It's not like, oh, you just have to have a strong will and don't eat that food. It's like, no. They created that food to make it addictive, to make it so you can't just have one. They have designed it. And it's not even just a flavor thing. It's a chemical thing. They know exactly how to tap, the chemicals in your brain to ensure that you're eating not just one of those, but maybe even the whole bag. But one of the things they do is by having these really enhanced flavors. So nature and like in nature, flavor and nutrition typically go hand in hand. So in nature, if something has flavor, that means it's also nutritious. So that is the wires that build our body. Basically, it's built into our DNA to think that if something has flavor, that means it's going to be nutritious. Now you can go to the store, you buy that packaged food, it's got crazy flavor, and then your body's like, won't stop eating it because it's waiting for the nutrition to tell it to stop. Because it's nutrition that gets us full, right? It's the density of that nutrition that's going to make us full. And your body never gets a stop. It never gets communicated. Okay, stop, because there's no nutrition to that flavor. So it's completely throwing off our natural instincts. And so that's what we're up against. And I'm always just trying to educate people, like, I find that you almost have to outsmart the modern times. And what I mean by that is you cannot depend on like, oh, well, I'm going to buy the ice cream, but I'm not going to eat it every day. I'm just going to eat it every Sunday. And I'm going to, you can't like placate the industry. Like, I find like, if you're someone who does not have an off switch, which most of us don't, just don't bring it into your house. Like, use your emotional learned intelligence around how you interact with food and just honor it. Like for me personally, if I have ice cream in the house, I will eat it. I will make an excuse to eat it. So I just don't bring it in the house.
Yeah,
and then I don't think about it and I don't feel deprived. Like, it's not even an issue. Like, it's literally out of sight, out of mind. And so there's nothing about me that feels like, oh, woe is me, I'm not eating ice cream. It's like, no, I don't think about it because it's not a necessity to live. But when it's in the house, I think about it every second and I'm like, oh.
Calling you from the freezer.
Yeah, right. Do you have I know you've been eating so clean for so long, but do you still have are all your kind of cravings just nixed, or do you have moments of like, oh, I'm really
No. I mean, if I'm around it, and because as it comes in the house, and I've learned to say no over time. But no, I mean, I'd definitely say there's times when I have to just it's a mental, like, you know what, I don't need that. This isn't serving me. Did the same thing with alcohol. I knew there's things I wanted to accomplish. I was starting to interfere with my sleep a little bit. I just said, okay, I'm just not gonna. I'll have a sip of my wife's here and there. If she has something that's interesting, I want to taste it. But that's it. I haven't had a drink that I poured myself a drink. I had a drink in probably 15 months now. Before that, it was like every 2 or 3 months. So, and that really helped I think that really affected my ability to say no to, improve my ability to say no to a lot of other foods as well. But I had already, kind of taken those out of my system. And so it's like, I'm not Superman with it. It's not like it's just like has no effect on me whatsoever. No, I have to mentally think about it at times, and others I'm just like, I just don't need it. I just, so it comes and goes. I think it depends on the stress level, something like that. Late at night is always most people's weakness. When you're a bit tired, your defenses are down, you're trying to chill out. So no, I still have to think about it. And I do love the taste of, like, admittedly, really dark chocolate. Is that nice bitter, and so I'll have something like that.
How high, what percentage do you usually go for? Like 88 or
80,
lower?
85, 88 to 88, right in that range.
Yeah.
Usually 85, 88.
That's what I do too.
Yeah, it's nice bitter. I like bitter. I like black coffee. So, I mean, I'm just a bitter guy. I like that savory and bitter and spice. Like you said, spicy AF. That's where I tend to lean with food. And so for me, that's a nice, little indulgence that, I think it's manageable and it's not oversweet, but I enjoy it, and it kind of cuts that little edge. And I don't seem to have a downside from it. So, my numbers all still look good. I'm not binging on it. But it's with something like ice cream, or you go into like really sweet chocolate, or if you were to go in, something else like that, it does create that kind of cycle of more, and there's no off switch.
Yeah.
Or something bitter or strong, a lot of flavor, and maybe a little extra fat in it, like a lot of dark chocolate tends to have a little more fat and less sugar. I get cocoa from the cocoa, I guess. It's, I don't know if it has an off switch to it, but it just seems
more
like
satiated.
It's more satiated. It's just a little more like I get because of the flavor, I kind of get my, my switch flipped enough that I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Isn't that interesting though? Like, because you just spoke to this, and I found this to be true as well. If I do a little bit of something, it makes me want more of it. But if I just don't do any of it, then I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not talking about dark chocolate. I'm just talking about the other stuff, the sweeter stuff or anything. I've learned to I used to see all or nothing as more of like like you're being deprived. Like I used to,
Right.
when I was younger, I thought that that was the case. And now I'm like, no, no, no. Actually, having clear boundaries of like just all or nothing is actually a good thing, because then you don't fall into feeling bad the next morning. You start to regulate. You start to find that your optimum is now like consistent, like just always at a certain level.
Yeah. I think it's just certain things. I think there's certain things I think you need to put in that class of it's best not to touch. It's best not to go there because you just end up spiraling and you create a resistance to it. You create it's a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And I think alcohol is the same way with a lot of people. It's like we start off with maybe I'll just have one glass and within a few weeks you're having two or three. And so, and that's just, if there's, to the point that maybe the initial time you touched that or you indulge, there wasn't a downside, but it only takes a matter of weeks where it goes up a little bit more, and the poison is in the dose, as they say. So you eventually get to that dose where you're starting to have a downside, but you've created enough resistance or kind of normalized it in your habits that you're almost excusing it, or you start, well, it's not too bad, or I won't have, you start to emotionally, uh, uh, deal with it in a way or excuse it that allows you to stay with it. And that does, that's going to affect your behavior to the point you're taking it to, having that downside with it. And that's when you kind of have to realize, okay, this is a food I can't really indulge in small amounts because, most of us, if you have that kind of, what it is, what it is, you've done it before, it's happened. If you're honest with yourself, um, you know, this is a good time to break. James has a special promo for our listeners for EatPluck, or for the Pluck seasoning. He's giving us 15% off with code Zane. So just my name, Zane. Use that code. There'll be a link in the show notes and you get 15% off of EatPluck, which we appreciate, James. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just go to eatpluck.com. Anything you order there, you just keep it all caps, capital Zane, 15% off, and make sure to let us know what you think of it. It's we haven't really met, like, for example, a kid that doesn't like it. Like, kids love it. So, and parents, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there's something for everyone, so definitely give it a try, and hopefully you start to feel better immediately from it.
Awesome. Tell us a little more about your background. I know you were a chef for a number of years. What, 17 years? Is that right?
Yeah, it's been over now, 17. Yeah, this is always fun. People like to hear names thrown out, but
Oh yeah.
so I used to cook for a lot of celebrities, one of them being Tom Cruise, and
Oh,
I cooked for George Clooney and Gerard Butler, and even did a little bit with Barbara Streisand and John Cusack, and just used to be full. I used to live in LA and used to cook for lots of celebrities, and it was actually I was working with Tom when I decided to start my own business, which was a meal delivery service, and one of the reasons why I focused on that was because I loved working with Tom. He's a really great guy. He was very good to me, and I left prematurely though, because I think they would have kept me on had I not chose to leave. But I just felt like I just had this nagging feeling that I was here to help more people than just, one person. And I was finding that when I was cooking, we talked earlier about, it's really about real food. Like just if you're going to focus on any kind of diet trend, just focus on real food. Like let that be the basis. And that's how I cooked. I made everything from scratch, including dressings and sauces. I made them really clean when I was first out of culinary school and cooking for people. And it was amazing. Like that one change. I was cooking for like families where the mothers they couldn't lose their baby weight for years. They just couldn't lose it. And all I did was give them food that was made from scratch, that had really clean whole food ingredients. And then they lost the weight and they were so happy. And, I was seeing that, and I was seeing how overjoyed they were. And I was like, okay, I have more to do here. Like, I am not just here to support that 1%. I want to help that 99% that are struggling with their health that don't even realize that they're not optimal, that they don't realize that their every day is below normal. Like it's like that they can thrive, that they could truly be thriving, but they just have to make a couple of changes to what they're eating and what they're allowing past their mouth. Like they gotta learn that piece.
Mm.
But once they do, they will feel better than they ever have felt, and they'll feel as good as they should be feeling. Like our bodies are amazing. The human body is truly amazing, and we should all be thriving all the time, but we're not. So that was my whole mission, was how can I support people to thrive?
So you created a meal delivery service around LA?
Yeah, I ran that for 8 years, and typical. Hopefully you'll identify with this. I think you will. I haven't met someone that doesn't, but here you are in the health field trying to help people get healthy, but whose health suffers?
Yours. Yeah.
I swear it's hands down. Every health practitioner I talk to, every person, they're like, yeah, the one person that's not getting served in their health is myself. And that's totally what happened. Is I was making these healthy meals for people, was helping tons of people, and I was absolutely suffering. I was not working out. I wasn't eating well. I was barely getting any sleep, maybe 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours a night. And I absolutely believe that I probably took like 5 years off my life in 8 years.
Mm.
And when I left that business, when I sold that business, we had our second child, and we were now living in Portland, Oregon. And I became the stay-at-home dad for 4 years, and I just got my health back.
Mm.
I rested, I slept a lot, I ate better, I started working out again, and yeah, I got to connect with my daughters, in a way that most fathers don't. So it was a really, really, I'm grateful that we could do that, because my wife had to take on the burden of, bringing in the money for the family. And so I'm grateful that she was able to do that and willing to do that. And I'm grateful I had that time, because I honestly, I don't think I would even be here if I didn't have that. I was really running myself down. I was really burning the candle at both ends.
The life of an entrepreneur, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not uncommon. I mean, my clients are like that as well. Most of them they have a business, or they're at the head of running some corporation, and they're the ones who are, they're killing it. They're successful on the business side, but their health is suffering, and they need their health to continue to kill it on the business side. So it's really a struggle. The thing that you need your health for is what's taking it from you. So there's a real, I hate to use the word balance, Steve, because it's so overused, and there is no such thing as balance. I mean, it's constant mobile movement of changing, but it's really hard as an entrepreneur when things start moving forward, that to put yourself in a place to take care of yourself, because the demand is so strong. And you're like, I've been working so hard to get to this spot where it's rolling, and I've got to keep up with it. And that demand is so strong. That's the first thing that goes is your own health, your own care, self-care. So you're in good company for that. That's just the most common thing. So what led you to create this?
Well, it was during those 4, well, it's kind of a mix of things. So the food product the food delivery service,
Mm-hmm.
it's very service oriented. So it was very much beholden to customers' preferences, really. I mean, and I incorrectly built the company. I was coming off being a private chef. So I thought, well, I'm going to create a company where I'm basically everyone's private chef. So we'll customize the meals to serve your needs. So why that was a huge mistake is I'll just use one example, which is, let's say I'm making a chili. Well, chili, let's say I'm cooking it for 20 people, that one chili. Well, one person doesn't do onions. One person doesn't do black beans, but they'll do red beans. One person doesn't do turkey, but they will do beef, or another one doesn't do beef, but will do chicken. So basically I had to deconstruct that chili. So I was making every ingredient separately, and then I was combining them for each customer at the end to serve the person that didn't eat onions and the person that didn't do chilies and the person that didn't eat beef or pork or whatever it was. And it was not scalable at all, but I didn't know that going in. And so we did that for a long time, but it was crazy making, and I was having to create these menus, these extremely detailed, insane menus daily to serve everyone's needs. And the customers were super happy because they were
Sure.
getting very customized meals for not what they probably should have been paying. But holy moly, like we were dying in the kitchen. Like it was killing us as we grew.
Well, I imagine that's not scalable. I think you
No.
can't customization and scalability are not rarely go together. And so that's, I can imagine as soon as you said what you were doing, I knew where it was going because that's kind of that crossover between a one person show trying to scale, and you're so used to making everything catering to that one client that shift from one to one to one to many is like, it's a complete different mindset. It com
Totally.
It's a different mindset, it's a different, business model, and your delegation has to increase, which means there's less customization, so it's really, that's a difficult hurdle. I can imagine I can see why that ran you into the ground.
It
Um,
did, but it informed me. Because it was so service oriented, that's why when I was that stay-at-home dad, I was getting my health back and getting my creativity back as well. Because when you're maxed out, you lose your creativity. A lot of people don't
yeah,
talk about that, but you really do.
yeah,
You become almost like a drone. Like you can't kind of think, can't answer questions. You have decision fatigue. You have no creativity. You're not dreaming, things like that. I started to get all those facilities back, and as I did, I was like, I don't wanna do anything with I didn't wanna have to deal with any product that was gonna be beholden to people's whims or their eccentricities. I was like, I just wanna make a food product that this is what it is, and you either buy it or you don't. If it doesn't fit what you do or what you want, then it's all good. We'll focus on the people that it does fit for. So that was my initial kind of inclination, but then it got actually a lot deeper, than that because, my daughter we did this trip to Canada, when my youngest was pretty young still. I wanna say like 1-ish, maybe she was 2, maybe, um, and both kids they got Shiga toxin, which is like a form of E. coli,
yeah.
and
Wow.
it's very fatal for elderly and young kids. Because what happens is you can't give them an antibiotic, actually, that will exacerbate it, and nothing can be held down, like, they're throwing up or pooping or literally anything going in just goes right out, like, nothing can be held in, and, my oldest daughter got through it pretty quickly, but my youngest daughter was already pretty small, like, she was just very thin and never really a chunky kinda kid or anything like that, and, so I still owned the business, the meal delivery service at the time, and I was flying back to LA, and she had it, but we for some reason we thought she was on the mend, and she was already pretty thin, but I then left for 2 days and I came back and it was still going on. And I came back to a daughter who was literally skin and bones. She looked so emaciated, and it was so frightening as a parent. And I just remember like staying up late that night and just the awareness of like, oh, how do I help my little girl? Like it's something that just has to pass. Like they don't have anything for it unless kids get really, really ill, then they can do an intravenous tube or something like that. But even then they don't know if they're going to hold it in. That's where it started to percolate of like, okay, how can I get the nutrient dense foods into my daughter who's ill right now, but do it where it will assimilate, easily absorb into her body, and also, not be a hurdle. Like if I cooked up organ meat and fed it to her, that would be a hurdle because she's not gonna eat it. She wouldn't do it. So I was like, "How can I make it so that I'm not dealing with any picky eating any kind of like issues around that, but that I'm able to get these really nutrient dense foods. Cause at one point she started eating toast. Like it was the one thing she could do was like toast and butter or something. But I was like, toast and butter, like that's just so not good for her. I'm like, and it was so frustrating 'cause that's all she could eat for a few days, like 4 to 5 days. And I was like, oh man, if I just had something I could sprinkle right on top of that, her body would just, like absorb it and love it. And I would feel better as a parent because, yeah, she's still eating the toast, but at least she's getting those nutrients. And that's really where I started to conceive of the idea.
Wow. Wow. Mm,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's really like, I get really emotional thinking about it because it's really is a product. I mean, that stems from being a father, and from having kids and as a parent, I mean, what do we want? What do we want? If you're a parent, what is it you truly want? You want your kids to be healthy, happy,
Yeah.
and, you know,
Productive.
successful in life,
Yeah.
whatever successful means, but to you, but you want them primarily to be healthy and happy. And, you know, seeing your child and with any kind of illness is just so scary. So, I
Oh, I'm
always
sure.
kind of reflect on that when Father's Day comes around.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. That's a point. And then out of that came the concept for this product. So I'm sure it's a very personal business for you, personal endeavor.
Yeah, it is funny too. It's so weird when and maybe you're feeling this with your book even, like, when you create something that's so intimate, like this is something I made in my kitchen, initially, and I wasn't really I mean, I knew I wanted to put it out there, but I didn't know what that meant. And so at first it was like for a good year, it was just about testing it in my kitchen and we would have dinner parties and I would put it on the food and get people's feedback. And it was such a personal experience. And then to finally put the product out there and start seeing sales, and I'm like, I don't know who that person is. Like they're not a family member and they just bought it. And they live, in Tennessee or they live somewhere that I don't live. Like they're not a neighbor. Like how and
Right.
seeing people from all over the country and sometimes parts of the world buying this product that I conceived in my kitchen, what I mean? My personal kitchen, it just I'm in complete awe of that process. I'm still in awe of it, and I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful to everyone that is connecting with us, to the product. They're getting organ meats into their diet, but I don't take it for granted. I never do. I'm just constantly in awe of that process of reach and exposure.
I get it. I completely get it. We get comments and stuff like you said about the book, or I just, I totally understand what you're saying. And with yours, very personal, much more personal book. I would imagine go not only from your kitchen, but was conceived from a struggle you were trying to overcome, a necessity turned into creativity for your child. And so that's got to be very personal. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And you think, oh my gosh, how does this work? How rewarding to think that you've been able to take what started as a point of pain, and then you created something from it. And now other people are solving their problems with it, with your creativity.
Oh,
And so,
it means so much. The stories, the emails we get of parents saying like, um, my kids love this product. They ask for it. They cry when we run out, and it's inspiring the adventurous eaters. It's inspiring kids that were very picky to be more adventurous. There's one story I'll share that I did that's the thing too is and I know this is true with your book as well, because you have intentions when you create something, but you don't know where it's all gonna go. You don't know how people are gonna how people will benefit from it. You hope they're gonna benefit from it, but you just don't always know how. And I had a practitioner share with me that they had a client whose daughter is spectrum, who was very limited, barely ate anything. And the parent was really concerned, and so the practitioner said, "All I want you to do is start using Pluck on the food you are giving her. That's it."
mm,
And she did, and then the parent started to share only a few weeks later. She said, my daughter's now eating more foods. She's and I had never thought of Pluck as that, but it kind of directly connects to our earlier conversation about the palate. And you know, you said you kind of are into the bitter foods, right? So that's one of the ways to adjust and change your palate is I look at food as color a lot of times. So I think of like a painter's palette. And so let's just say, you know, we have the sweet, we have the salty, we have the bitter, the sour, and then umami is the fifth one. And that's
Mhm.
what pluck is umami. Um, but like I always think of like, well, the US, the standard American diet is very salty and sweet. So we're kind of
Right.
those blue and yellows, you know, where that's primarily where we lie. And if you find your child is gravitating between salty and sweet foods, then the way to start to change them and get them out of that is to bring in the other three. But you don't have to go all in with the other three. You just got to introduce it. So you can add a little bitterness, like, or a little sourness, like maybe a little bit of cultured veg, maybe a pickle, whatever it is. Add a little sour juice, you know, pickle juice to something they are eating. And it's just a tiny bit just to get that, just
Right.
get a
Stimulate it.
hint. Yeah, a little bit, right? The pluck is the umami. You can bring that in, but you just start bringing the other colors or the other taste, however you want to classify it. And then now your kid's palate's going to change and they'll become more adventurous.
Yeah. Well, and it helps them just, I think, move toward more home cooked meals that are simple and not hyper palatable like the processed food. Move them away from processed food, but you're stimulating it in a very different way. And so if they think the home cooked, you know, mom's chicken or mom's roast or whatever it is isn't as tasty, but you sprinkle a little pluck on there, like it lights up that, you know, and like gives back to that original sort of purpose of the palate, which is to indicate nutrition.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Uh, But that's a great way to do it, especially with kids. Just like so their mind sort of associating this home cooked food, which at first may seem bland to them, but it's you add that in to let them their brain sort of associate it with nutrients unconsciously to them, but
Totally.
it'll, like you said, stimulate that palate. Um, I gotta ask, since I'm always preaching about the dangers of the seed oils. So what's your take? What do you, I mean, obviously I can guess, but I'm just gonna say, what do you typically cook with? What kind of fasts do you cook with? And what is your, when people start asking you about oils versus fats, how do you explain it? How do you communicate the benefits of what you use versus what they're going to find at most restaurants or in their processed food?
Well, as a chef, I used to always approach it from like heat temperature, you know, like
Mhm.
what's going to have the highest smoke point basically. So we never in school would cook with things that, you know, when you were cooking low heat, you know, olive oil was fine, things like certain kind of oils or fats that, well, most fats are high heat, but let's just say oils that were more delicate, you
Mhm.
know. If you were doing really low heat, that was fine. But people that were using these kind of low heat oils at high temperatures, they were just causing tons of oxidation, tons of issues. And so that was how we approached it early on in culinary school. But of course, later on, I was like, whoa, 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 hold on. So then you start to learn, well, the ones that actually do have high temp are animal fats. They're all like, they're all pretty much across the board. You can hit high temperatures with them and they're fine. They don't smoke. They're totally fine. And so and you know, obviously these are the fats that are solid at room temperature typically. And so those are the ones that we started to look at as like, well, these are the ones you cook with. So like for in my kitchen, I don't have I don't have any vegetable oils, honestly. Well, I mean, I have olive oil in my cupboard and I only use that for dressings.
Mhm.
Really. That's it. The fats that I use, for cooking is I have ghee. I'm a big fan of ghee, which is clarified butter for anyone that doesn't know, and ghee has been around for 5,000 plus years. So
Yeah.
ghee is a tried and true cooking fat, like truly, and it's even got a lot of health properties to it if you're getting it from, you know, 100% grass-fed, cows. So ghee is one I use a lot. I use lard a lot. Um I love like a good clean lard from leaf lard, for example, or I even sometimes just use the bacon fat, I use that a lot. I use duck fat. I'm a big fan of duck fat. So good. Duck fat. So if you're someone who eats potatoes, for example, and there's a great recipe on eatpluck.com for I think we call them pluck potatoes, but look that one up because it is like insane. It's almost like the potato and duck fat were meant to be together. It was like somewhere in nature, they were just designed to go well together because it really makes the best roasted potato in the world. I would say even French fry, if you were someone who ate that, like duck fat is
Yeah.
hands down the best one to cook a potato in. Um, so I use primarily those. And then yeah, that's really it. I mean, sometimes I use tallow sometimes. For me, tallow is more like it's a taste. Like I prefer lard because it doesn't have that flavor that tallow does. Lard to me is a lot more neutral. Um, but tallow's got it's got something to it, and I don't even know fully how to describe. Do you know how you would describe that bite it has?
No,
It's
I
not
know what
even
you mean though. It's hard to
bite's
describe
not
it.
even the right word. It's
No,
just got it's just a flavor. I don't know
it
what
has a
it
strong
is.
flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not like meaty, it's not like that, it's just something.
But
Um,
it's noticeable when you cook with it versus if using lard or butter. You can taste butter, but it's mellow and almost sweet enough or ghee it goes with the food. But tallow is distinct and it is
yeah, it
much
kinda
more
stands out to
abrasive.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it in pemmican, like, Carnivore bar is a pemmican bar, and they use tallow, and that it's delicious, but I don't tend to cook with it very often, and I also don't tend to cook with lamb,
Mm.
like lamb fat. I find that one as well just a little too much for me. But the
A
other
little
ones, yeah, a
gamey
little bit. But so I'll do butter, ghee, lard,
lard.
duck fat, and I do use coconut oil sometimes. But even that one, I don't go crazy with.
There's specific things it's great for, but like fish, I
Yeah,
think a great coconut and certain fish I think is good. Butter is
it
definitely
is.
better.
Yeah, it is interesting though when you kind of pull yourself out of these common vegetable oils, like whether it's rice bran oil to canola oils to soy oils.
Yeah.
When you I like telling this story because I think it's really telling about those oils, but, I used to when I lived in LA, I was hired to, work with this restaurant company. They were starting a restaurant, so I was basically developing their menu for them.
Mm.
And the way we started the process was we we basically drove around LA and parts of LA, and they took me to their favorite spots of, like, one of them was like a roasted potato. Basically, all the things they wanted on their menu, they were showing me this is the one that you need to either match or do better with. Like, so they were giving me their benchmark for flavor, and for food high, basically, if that makes sense. And they took me to this place in Long Beach that was known for its roasted potato. They were like, "Oh, everyone comes here to eat these roasted potatoes." I walked into the restaurant, opened the door, and the minute I smelled the oil that they were cooking it, you can smell it in the air. I was like, "Oh, this is not gonna be good." And they were like, "What? How do you know that?" I'm like, "Oh, I can the oil is burnt. You could smell it. They're frying with the oil. They're repeatedly frying with it. It's a bad oil. You can smell it in the air. It's gonna coat the food. You're gonna taste this smell in the food." And then they serve the roasted potato. They both tasted it and they were like, "It's delicious, right?" I'm like, "No, it tastes horrible. It's gross." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Look, give me 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks. Let me pull these kind of oils out of your diet and let me just cook with the real foods, the animal fats, and let's not use any of these oils that really shouldn't be used the way they're using them." And then go back to that restaurant. And they did that. And they were like, "Yeah, it's gross." Like, they were like, "I can't believe we didn't taste it before." But it's true, like, anyone go into a Thai restaurant, go to anywhere where they're always a fried chicken place, anywhere where they're always frying stuff and you can smell the oil, you'll start to smell it's got a burnt, like, bitter kinda, scent to it, And
Yeah.
that's a sign that it's a poor oil. It's probably oxidated and it's burnt. So it's not going to be good for you. It's going to cause inflammation when you eat it,
Oh, for
or
sure.
anything from it. And I notice, I don't know if you get like this when you tasting this stuff, but I totally notice I get phlegmy. Like, so if I eat a French fry that's cooked in canola oil, I literally will start to get a buildup of phlegm. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the oil. It's totally the oil that's being used. So
Y-
I've gotten keen. I've removed it from my diet so well that now when I get it, and sometimes it's a food I didn't even realize has canola in it, or soy, or one of these poor oils. Um, I won't even know it's in there, and then I'll eat the thing and I'll start to get phlegmy. I'm like, oh shoot, okay. I can feel my body react to it. It's
Well, I
just
think
it
a lot of
rejects
people
it.
get stomach bloat. So people have removed it. I know when it's all on retreats, we end up going to a restaurant, like we're in Costa Rica and you have a bunch of carnivores, a bunch of people have removed that from their body for several years. And you go to a restaurant and start eating, they cooked the meat in this oil, they coated it in
Yeah.
these soybean oils and stuff. And they're getting stomach distress, bloating. Everybody usually gets bloating. Some of them have severe reactions to digestion and just feel terrible. But the phlegmia, I think, would be like a histamine response or something like that, where you're getting this, your immune system has been alerted that you have
Yeah.
this highly oxidative, inflammatory oil. And like you said, they use that oil many times for a week or two at a time. It just continues to get more and more oxidated and burnt. And you have these aldehydes being formed, this chemistry being formed that your body has an immediate immune response to, just like, okay, we don't, this is not why it treats it like would a bacteria. It responds to it like it would a foreign bacteria that's attacking it. And most people are just so used to it. They're used to walking around bloated and inflamed. Once you've taken that out of your system, then you try, like you said, go to a Thai restaurant or get some Chinese food, go somewhere with a fried chicken. Like here, it's a chicken thing in Nashville, right? You're going to be bloated. You're going to blow. Stomach's going to be feel uncomfortable. You're going to maybe even feel the burn as you're eating it. And there's a definite reaction once you've taken it out of your system. I think so many people, as your clients who are used to it, they haven't removed it. That's just kind of what they expect. The body is just kind of doesn't know any different. And once you
It's still
remove it,
responding, but you're just constantly in
yes,
a state. It's like your body is still in a constant state of inflammation that
right,
you're not aware that you could feel better, or that
right,
your body's reacting to it, because it's almost like it's like your body is so ill it doesn't realize
right.
that you're continuing to keep it in that ill state in a sense. I love, I'm sure you know about this, but the seed oil scout, that there's the app.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that his name is James who created that, and it's a great app because it informs you of what restaurants are using these seed oils, because sometimes you don't know. Like, you would think, oh, well, it's a grilled steak. Why would I have to worry about if there's a canola or soy oil on there? And it's like, oh, but they're cleaning the grill with the oil, or it's a griddle and they're putting the oil down before they put the steak on. You just don't know. Like,
they're
I'm
cooking
always
it
blown
in
away.
that oil to keep it from sticking, to give it that crispy coating on the outside, where it makes it a little extra crisp finish on the outside. They might even be basting it on there with the whatever sauce or seasoning. It might be part
Totally.
of that. I've used that app around here trying to find place where I could take people, because I'm creating like a animal based meetup here in Nashville, a meetup group where we can go find this. And there's nowhere. I mean, on CDL Scout, there's like 2 green dots of places where
Yeah,
it has no seed oils, and they have that app is fantastic because you can send like their little letter. It's like an asking, a little note that you can get from the Scout app, and send it to the contact page of the restaurant and ask them about the oils they use for allergic reasons, right? And the responses you'll get, they ask you to kind of submit them to this app so that they can create this database. So it's going to be a great tool as it builds out. But so many places, they might use them in their veggies, but they don't use it in their meat, or the meat, the base of the meat, whatever they base, like a barbecue place, whatever they put on their season, the rub might have a lemon oil in it or something, which might be high in, not as bad as soybean oil, but it does have some linoleic acid depending on your sensitivity. And then there's certain meats that are if they use if you get dry versus wet, the dry rub has a lot of soybean oil in the rub, places you wouldn't expect.
Totally.
But so like you said, it's things you wouldn't think. But if they're brushing something on a steak or something like that to get it kind of crispy, or think of grilled vegetables, if you want to go that route, whatever they're brushing on those vegetables to get them to kind of get that crispy, singy exterior, they're using a canola or soybean oil or something like that.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Yeah, or safflower or something,
Yeah.
sunflower. It's guaranteed. And it goes back to what I brought up earlier in the conversation, which is I was talking about packaged goods at the grocery store, how they're looking for cheaper ingredients to
Right.
increase their profit margin. Well, restaurants have to do it too. I mean, the profit margin around food is incredibly low. You're not going to get wealthy just having one restaurant. Like, the only way to really get wealthy is having a chain of restaurants that are all feeding off each other that then allow you to get lower costs for the food. But the main way they do it is they buy cheap ingredients.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and it's really glaring. A lot of people don't know this. So when I had that meal delivery service in LA, I would go to this restaurant depot, they called it, and they have them all across the country. And in some areas, they're called other things, not just restaurant depot. But it's basically it's the warehouse where most restaurants go and catering companies go to get their ingredients. And I was going there to get the to-go containers I used, because I had these containers that I would bring everyone's food in. Well, those stores, they were serving all the restaurants in LA, and I would see these carts, these pre-filled carts, and they would just have the cafe or restaurant's name labeled to the cart, and they were, obviously it was like they were going to pick it up later kind of thing. Well, all these restaurants I thought were making things from scratch. And I was seeing on their carts, I'm like, wait, that's a prepackaged dressing, or that's Kraft mayonnaise, whatever it is. It was like, there's all these name brands, and it was pre-made product. And I was like, oh my God, they totally sell themselves as a farm to table restaurant. Like, that's how they market themselves.
Wow.
And there it was right there. It was all the canolas, the soils, all the crap. And I was like, people don't realize this. I guarantee it. They don't realize how unhealthy that restaurant is. And the reality is like, the only way to get healthy is something you articulated way early on in our conversation, which is to make your own food. You just got to, if you want to be healthy.
Yeah. The only restaurant we had them out at an event, but it was Zeke Foods. They didn't cater, unfortunately. We just had the owner up of Zeke Foods, Nick Nanentos. And he's out there in Austin, and he is making all of his meat is grass-fed sourced, and he's cooking with grass-fed butter and tallow. And so the only way he's made that, well, the way he made that work, and he's made it work very successfully in Austin. And he's branching out, because I was bending his ear about getting one in Nashville, is he's scaled back and figured out how to make his overhead for the actual kitchen, the restaurant, or kitchen really, to be a lot less expensive. So he's building basically a modular restaurant instead of a food truck. It's a modular kitchen, but he's increasing his food quality, decreasing his overhead and expense of the restaurant itself, so that he can bring a better quality product to the consumer. But he doesn't use any of those oils. It's all grass-fed butter, grass-fed tallow, and any meat is all grass-fed beef.
But still more expensive than the conventional restaurant, right? I mean, it's got to be, right? In terms,
well, I mean, it's conventional food truck meat, but I mean, people only spend $15 for a meal,
right?
And it's like, okay, $15 to get something is not going to bloat you. It's good for you. It's convenient. It's not like high-end restaurant. It's not fine dining, but that's what he had to do. If that was the model he created, so that he could bring better food, lower his overhead, and be able to make a profit, like you said, but without sacrificing the food quality.
Yeah.
And it was basically scale back on his overhead and improve. But that's the only place I know of where that is like, they're leading with that. That's their messaging. That is what they are all about, is we use high quality cooking fats, the tallow and the butter, and we're cooking with grass-fed beef, and we're bringing it to you because we care more about you and the quality that we're delivering than spending it on, the fancy structure. Yeah. And It's revolutionary. I mean, he's killing it, but you have to admire the guy who said, you know what, there's a problem here. I'm going to do what I can to fix it. But I don't know of another restaurant or at least chain of restaurants. There might be some individual restaurants, like you said, like one restaurant, mom and pop, but of a chain where there's like, he's got maybe 10 in Austin, uh, that's doing that and made it part of their mission. And
That's
it's a
awesome.
revolution. It's revolutionary. Yeah, it really is. It's welcome. See, but other than that, you better cook at home because anywhere you go, like you said, it's like they're using canola or soy or safflower, something like that. And I swear it's the biggest part of driving disease because those oils build up in our system and we're storing them as fat and they're creating the inflammation and disease in our bodies because we can't burn, they don't create energy. We can't really burn them for energy because they be stored in our body. So it's incredible.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad it's always reassuring when you hear people putting it out there and they're putting people's health before profit to a degree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously he's in it to make some profit too, but
Yes.
he's leading with people's health. And I think that's something we all need to remember is that there is an illusion of health out there. So, whether you're going to a restaurant or buying a product at a grocery store, they are marketing to you in any ways possible to get your attention to you to buy that product. But what they put on the outside of that product or on the outside of that restaurant doesn't necessarily indicate whether it's healthy for you. They may say it's healthy for you, but that has no indication of it. Because I guarantee there are healthy restaurants out there that you're eating at right now. I'm thinking of this place and not speaking about you, Zane, but I'm saying the
Right.
person listening. And I'm thinking of even this place in LA. It's called what is it called? Chicken Chicken Cafe, something Chicken Cafe. It's a huge, very, very popular place. And they're known for their salads in LA.
Mhm.
Um And so there's an illusion of like, oh, it's healthy, right? Salads, everyone associates
Right.
salads as being healthy. But I guarantee like those dressings that they're using, all the product they're using, it's just filled with these vegetable oils, sugar, all these issues, these things that are causing havoc in our body. Um, and yet people go there daily thinking that they're eating healthy. And it's an illusion. You're not. And you never will be eating at a restaurant like that. Never will be.
Right. Right. It's sad that doesn't have to be disclosed. But I guess we need to find those that are like the key and support them as much as possible. But really, if you like reiterate, you want to be healthy, you better learn how to cook and
Yeah.
and start creating your own meals and use, and think about what you're putting on them, like your product to add that extra flavor to get your kids used to eating home cooked meals and enjoying the flavor and associating those meals with nutrition because that's really we got to go backwards to go forward in a sense. We have to go back to how things were, how we used to cook, 120 years ago, and it's the bone broths and the organs and so forth, and just good old
Yeah.
fashioned roast and potatoes on something that's, or something simple like that. That's not been reformed, repackaged, things added to it, has multiple ingredients in it. Uh, that's that's really what's changed in our food system more than anything else. So, James, thank you so much. I know I've taken you a little longer than we thought, but I really appreciate you sharing. I mean, this has been insightful and for a lot of people who don't realize what's going on with their food system. But I want to thank you again. Uh, Again, the promotion to check out eatpluck.com, use code Zane for 15% off EatPluck. Check them out on Instagram or Twitter, Facebook, but go to eatpluck.com and, and look for his giveaway in August at EatPluck on Instagram. And I'll be giving away the book.
Yeah. Signed copy.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Super excited about that. Yeah, thanks again for having me. This has been a great conversation and hope people got some value of it and and anyone listening, feel free to reach out, go to the eatpluck.com and email us and let us know how we can support you. Our mission is to get organ meats into your diet. I really do believe, it's something like 92% of US of the U.S. population is nutrient deficient, and I
Yeah,
believe we treat people how we feel. So if you're nutrient deficient, you're probably not feeling great in your body. If I can help you feel better in your body, which I believe organ meats will, then I see you then treating people differently, then they treat you differently, and now we have a better world. So I really do believe increasing your nutrients, getting organ meats in your diet can change the world for the better.
absolutely. That's a great mission. It's a great reason to do it. Thank you, James.
Thank you.